Oh, there we go. Now it's got a little notification for it.
What's up, guys? It's everyone's favorite Campia T here, and it's time for the Shootin the Breeze live podcast. I know I haven't done one of these in a while. Um, Life sort of comes at you fast, roughly 60 miles an hour, whenever, your leg gets ripped off by somebody who's texting and driving. Anyway, today on the show, I have Jeff Ludica. Jeff, say hi.
Hi.
Perfect. How did we meet, Jeff?
Um, I believe the first time was at a arena match for QP,
I think so.
face to face.
Mhm.
You were just one of the guys goofing off and having a good time with it, and I was like, that's kind of my take. Like, I'm not here to be upset at every third miss or whatever. I'm gonna enjoy this and have a good time. And so,
Yeah, that definitely it frustrates me when people go to matches and they're taking it too seriously. It pisses me off. And actually, I remember whenever we first met, something that you did that has stuck with me ever since in competition, and that was before a stage, you put eye drops in your eye. And I'd never seen anybody do that before. And I was like, that's a good idea. So I started carrying eye drops because of you, because of something I saw you do at a match one time. You never know how you're going to affect people, right?
right. And what's really funny is I had just had LASIK like 2 days prior to that, like
Yeah.
not even 48 hours. So they were like, keep your eyes lubricated. And I was like, I mean, like, never had dry eyes. Like, I'll be fine. And I
Yeah.
remember opening my eyes after, like, oh, okay, where's these crazy drops? And so I did exactly what they said. They were like, every hour do this. All right, cool, deal. So, but yeah, no, dry eyes don't see very well.
Yeah. I had LASIK I think it was 8 years ago, and it started to fade, a couple of
Mm,
years ago and stuff like that. And then, obviously having multiple TBIs and stuff like that also affects your vision and things like that.
yeah, for
So
sure.
if the viewers have any questions, go ahead and type them in the comments, and we'll get to those later on in the podcast, or if it's relevant to the conversation that we're having at the time. All right, Jeff. So tell the viewers who you are.
I'm Jeff Ludica, and I'm here to have fun. Like, I literally just enjoy shooting competitions, doing a bunch of weirdo stuff in the reloading room that everybody's like, no one's done that before. Like, that kind of spikes my interest. I kind of have been very fortunate and been handed a lot of really smart people to work around and be around for my entire life as an adult. And so I'm kind of a product of a bunch of other really smart people and kind of hang out with them and learn all I can. And then I intend on helping others too. So that's kind of my big play in life is helping everybody else.
Learning through osmosis, right?
You know,
All right. So a very serious question that we always ask on this podcast: gas or bolt?
we're talking about daytime or nighttime and distance because gas guns rule the night. Like, you don't ever lose your target in the screen if you don't have to come off the gun or the gun doesn't disturb in any way. So I'm super partial to gas guns. I like that is where I like lived for 15 plus years and just I guess it's probably 17, but who's counting? But it's just kind of you know the way it is. There I started shooting PRS against all the bolt gun guys, and my very first match being a not realizing how big PRS was, and they actually had like a set of rules that you could follow, and this, that, and the other. I was like, I have I have a really accurate gas gun. These are 10-round stages. I'm just going to run a 20-round mag. Like, duh. Why would you limit yourself to a real accurate bolt gun that only holds 10 rounds? Like, that's crazy. And so I showed up my first match and discovered you could only shoot 10 shots of the 10-shot mag at the 10 targets. And I was like, oh, cool. I shot that with a 16-inch Seekins 223 that I had won and just been like, okay, cool, I'm going to do that. And what's really upsetting is I think I finished 6th in that match.
Mm-hmm.
And one of my best finishes now, with all the wazoo stuff that I have and knowledge that I've acquired, 6th in a major match is the best I've made. So, yeah. Really, that's a
if you would have said bolt gun and you're wearing a gas gun on your t-shirt, I'd have been real upset.
That's
also
fair.
And the analogy that I use where you were talking about how gas guns have just kind of are more advanced, they're just better, is we've moved on past the horse and buggy. I equate a bolt gun to old technology. All right, next question. What is your favorite chambering?
Larger small frame. Or what's it for? Let me rephrase that.
Pick your poison. What is just a rifle cartridge that you're just like, you know what? That is the bee's knees.
6GT.
6GT?
6GT.
Cool. Yeah. Your answer is probably the first Wildcat, which, I mean, I guess it's still considered a Wildcat. Yours is probably the first Wildcat answer that we've gotten so far. Is we've gotten a lot of like 5.56 and 6.5 Creedmoor and stuff like that. And mine was 6.5 Grendel whenever we initiated the podcast. I've moved on a little bit since then, but
No, that's a good one.
All right. Dial or hold?
I do both. I was hardlining hold on literally everything right up until about 2 years ago. And I decided to put it on the clock. And in precision matches, I beat myself dialing when I could have been holding. Or holding was slower. It was only by a second or two, but at least
See, I used to hold everything. I used to be all holds, and that's it. I would zero the rifle at 100 and never touch the turrets after that. Yep. But since I've had multiple TBIs now, I get lost in the reticle. I didn't used to do that. So now it takes me longer to find my point of aim within the reticle and put that on target and rip off the shot. If I have a multi-target stage that are, very like different distances and stuff like that, I'll usually dial to the first target and then engage the targets after that with the reduced hold.
Yeah, that's a great way of doing stuff, especially those fast-paced stages. It's a great way of doing it.
Yeah. All right. What is your long-range experience?
I don't want to sound like I know it all in any way, because I'm not. I guys that know me and work with me and I sit around with a bunch of super smart engineers and ballisticians and powder crazy chemical engineers. I don't know it all. But I kind of think if it's shooting in long range, chances are I've done it. I've shot PRS. You know what? I have not done an NRL 100 match. I think that'd be fun. But all sniper matches, probably done them at one point or another. Probably done some other wazoo matches that aren't announced. Done, USPSA 3-gun, IDPA. Like, I really enjoy just being on the range. So I've done ELR. I actually got to shoot in King of the 1 Mile this year for the first time. That was fun. It's kind of a bucket list, checking it off. Next year I'm going to do King of the 2 Mile. That's kind of the goal. So I think with shooting, if you pigeonhole yourself into one thingy, you kind of you lose the ability to teach in all the other areas. So,
Thingy being an official term.
absolutely. So those of you that know me know that, what is that thingy like that? Yeah, that, it's a dedicated term.
All right, matches that you host or are affiliated with.
So at Coleman's Creek, I've done the senior match a couple times. As far as MD, the ELR match, I think we're on 3. That one's a good one. Uh, Affiliated with, I really don't hold any affiliations. I kind of just stay as the gray man in the back, hanging out, helping folks. MD and I really like those. That to me is a lot of fun because you get to think through stuff and you're like, oh man, how is this going to be too difficult, or is it not? Or it's just a lot of setup. It's fun. I enjoy it.
All right, what are tips and tricks or something that gave you an aha moment with long range shooting? What is something that you, once you figured it out, you were like, oh, this makes everything so much better, so much easier?
I've had so many aha moments. I don't even know how to put one in perspective. I guess one, let's see, it would have been the first time I ever saw myself ranked up against my peers. And I was like, oh man, cool. I didn't do as bad as I thought I did. Sweet. And it kind of one of those, like, everybody puts their pants on one leg at a time. Doesn't matter who you are. So, like seeing a bunch of people
I
that I
don't.
really respected.
I don't put my pants on one leg at a time, Jeff.
You get just the tip of one. So there's that.
What one leg at a time is the only way I wear my pants, just one leg of pants.
See, nailed it. Yeah, just coming to the realization, like, doesn't matter who you are, where you are, doesn't matter what you've learned in life, anyone can be beat on any given Sunday. And the guy that shoots the most and trains purposely is the one that's going to win. That's kind of my biggest, aha moment, tip and trick, whatever you want to word it on. Like, there's no substitute for range time. There's no substitute for wind calling. It Don't get me wrong, I dry fire, and especially before like big like finale matches. Like every morning, I wake up 15 minutes before the family does. I come down and I do 10 to 12 minutes of beep go, and just throw the gun down, defat training, and just get that muscle memory and like the dumbest things I can find in the house and my wife won't shoot me for tearing the top of it off of the bag. One of the dinner chairs is now mine. It's so, but it was one of the 2 extras, so we're good.
Fine.
Yeah, totally fine. Yeah, wind calling is a whole nother thing. Like, that's just been an adult lifetime of learning. I don't know there's been one aha in it, if that makes sense.
No, it does. What is a piece of equipment that you think really stands out above others? Like on this podcast, we've had a lot of people say like the game changer bags. We've had a lot of people say tripods and things like that.
Rifles being thrown out of the equation. I would really have to say an applied ballistics kestrel with a CDM of whatever you're shooting on it. That is, in my mind, the thing that can change people's shooting or placement more than they will ever understand, especially if you can properly use it. Like, for instance, I was teaching a guy ELR and kind of helping him get set up. I say set up, he'd done it a couple times. He'd shot 2 matches plus another like full sanctioned DLR matches or match, and he basically ran everything off of a dope card. And he was like, "This is what I run." And when this doesn't match a DA that I have, I throw it in stray lock. And I was like, okay, cool. So how far you want, like, what exactly are you calling ELR? Just kind of, everybody's got this mystical definition. It's always different sometimes. And he was like, 2 miles, maybe a little bit beyond. And I was like, you're not using a Kestrel at all? It's like, how many times have you hit at 2 miles? And he's like, well, I've never done it. Okay. Like, what's the farthest shot you got? 1 mile. Okay, well, that's kind of easy to make without a Kestrel. You can shoot, see or miss, move it up. As long as the bullet makes a poof, generally speaking, you can just move that to the target and break the shot again.
Right.
But so after a couple training sessions, he finally broke down, and I'd been just letting him use my Kestrel because we're not going to fumble through data and waste this guy's time. So he finally broke down, got a Kestrel, and the next match, I'm pretty sure the first one, he was just under mid-pack, like kind of in that 60% area. I'm kind of making that number up. Don't really remember. But he finished like third or fourth in the next match. And I told him, yeah, no, he did great. And it was super apparent. Like, I'd run him through little mini stages and stuff. And as soon, like the day he got his Kestrel and, helped him set it up and everything, his hit percentages went astronomical. That first round wasn't just a hope and a prayer. So,
what are some new developments in your life? This could be a promotion at work, you got a new car, had a kid, anything.
One of the most interesting to me and my son is my son wants to pitch now. So he started playing fall balls, kind of having fun. And I know it sounds real, maybe not the coolest thing to everybody else, but like, it's something that I've never pitched. I don't know how to pitch. I don't know how to teach you how to pitch. So we've YouTubed it. And like everybody else that knows everything nowadays, YouTubed it. All of a sudden, we pretend we know how to pitch. And we're out on the front yard, and there's just a little slope. And he's pitching. Now, I got to give it to him. The first time he threw me a pitch, in my mind, I was like, I have shortchanged this kid's ability severely. He was standing on this pretend mound, and I mean, he's 9 and pitching. I mean, when it hit the glove, it snapped and it snapped it back, and it was a dead perfect strike. First pitch he's ever thrown, and I was like, oh, wow, man, I'm sorry we took so long for us to actually understand what we were doing and try this. I didn't want to give any bad input, Yeah, we watched a bunch of pros YouTube stuff because we don't know how to pitch. But, wow, okay, cool. So now, I mean, obviously that was beginner's luck. God loves him, kind of blessed him with a real good first pitch. He's thrown a bunch of crazy ones. He's thrown a bunch of good ones. But it's really cool to me because, like, last night we were pitching out front doing his commitment, and commitment being something that we made up. Like, he said he wanted to get good at baseball. So we kind of, every day during baseball season, we do 10 throws, 10 hits, 10 grounders. We were trying to do 10 fly balls. It kind of depends on how much daylight we have, really.
Yeah. That can get dangerous in the dark.
Yeah, you won't mess that up more than once. He's definitely been hit in the face with a ball. Getting under it square, and turns out it was 6 inches behind where he thought it was. But then, long story short, we're on the pitching mound. I'm trying to get him to throw 10 strikes. And I was like, all right, we're good. Like, that was a great pitch to end on. We're done. And he's like, no, like, I want to keep going. Like, to see his internal drive to to train and to try to work to get better. I was like, man, this is awesome. So that for me, that's one of my big aha moments is, or like super happy developments in life right now is like my kids actually got a little drive to succeed. That's awesome. So
that will carry them a lot further than needing a safe space like most kids these days.
yeah.
All right.
No
So
kidding.
let's talk about cool toys. What is a cool toy that you want to talk about? Starts with a 22, ends with an arc.
Yeah, generally called a 22 arc. It's oh my, yeah, I guess it did. This little guy. So I know that helps literally no people. But yeah, it's
Looks real similar to this little guy.
real similar to that little guy, maybe a grain shy.
Yeah, just
Roughly. Yeah. So I'm not going to pretend in any way that I invented the 22 arc. Like, not even close. There's 22 PPC. George Gardner's been shooting 22 arc for like before I even considered it. 22 AR. There's a 22 LBC. There's 22 Grendel. 224 Predator. There's a guy on one of the YouTube things, 22 DPC. Like there are shenanigan level amounts of let's take this cartridge, neck it down to 22 and see what kind of cool stuff we can do. So this is kind of the way I saw it set up. You know, to others it may be different. I kind of took a efficiency of a cartridge kind of path, trying to, mimic what they've done with 6.5 Creedmoor, 6.5 PRC, 6GT, different things like that, where they said, all right, cool, what's mag length? How close do I need to get to the lands? Where do I need to put the shoulder to actually have it ramp up at the proper amount of time to not ding any necks? I mean, this is, I don't know how many times I've done this and kind of making up stuff, but I wish my camera's not going to be able to show you. But any of you guys at home that like to have fun with it, that little round's been chambered quite a few times. The tip isn't even dented. So, and that's a Hornady bullet. Like that polymer is going to dent the second it pretends to even get close to something. They break off all the time. Yeah. One of the guys at the QP match a couple weeks ago picks it up and he's looking at it. He's like, you ever seen this before? The whole tip was broke off, laying on the side. It was still attached, so I can't say it broke off. It was still on the tip, but it was like there was a filament holding it in place, and it was laying off to the side. Yeah, I've seen that quite a few times.
If you use ELDs or ELDMs or ELDXs enough, you'll see it.
Yep, 100%. And you know what's fun is like short range, they're still wicked accurate. Like still really, really very small group holes that short range accuracy.
Yeah, I've had some very good groups out of my 22 Grendel. And I don't necessarily attribute that to being a phenomenal hand loader or anything like that. It's just it's easy to load for me. I feel like
sure.
the 22 Arc, 22 Grendel, 22 DPC, 220 Russian, 224 Predator, whatever we're going to call it today, I feel like it is where we're sitting at currently in the forever hunt for the perfect AR-15 cartridge.
Yeah.
Like this is where we are technologically. Like this is like, okay, we can make some small advances and we just keep kind of driving forward. I think the 6 Arc was a really good step in the right direction. It's not without its flaws, which I mean, everything's got give and take. But I think that this is the progression that we're looking at.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, 6 Arc is probably one of the coolest AR-15 cartridges released in the last 15 years. Is it different than basically any of the other like 24 LBCs or 6 grendels. I mean, yeah, kind of. There's some engineering things that were either done by happenstance and just kind of happened to go well. But, there's some discussion points there. One of the funniest replies to like, hey, what do you think about this? I was talking to Troy. Troy knows everything. Like, the guy's been reloading for AMU for, now I'm making up stuff, 30 years. I don't actually know, but the guy knows basically everything that he has ever tested. I was like, man, what do you think about this? And he was like, it'll do great. And he said it with a lot of confidence. And I was like, well, what makes him think that? Now, I didn't say anything, but he could see the look on my face. And he was like, we've been shooting a 6mm AR for 30 years. It has done great. There's no reason to expect this not to do well. I kind of chuckled and like, yep, absolutely. I wish they'd have made it as accurate as a 6 PPC. They didn't, but
Missed opportunities.
it is what it is. Like this 22 arc, I think I was telling you, like I did all kinds of things that I thought was really good for a cartridge. I kind of took some lessons learned from other people, kind of, hey, this is where I want to shoulder. I say other people, other like SAMI cartridges that like have prints that I can look at leads and throats and lead diameters or freebore diameters and just kind of like what is working really, really well, what didn't work, and kind of where do I place it? And I kind of went down this rabbit hole of like, all right, concerning the bullet, I don't really care that much about jump. It does matter to a certain extent, but like most of the cartridges I shoot, I load to the factory call. I come up with a node that shoots 3/8 to half minute there, and I just run that for the whole barrel. I never even consider throat erosion or any version of that. And so that's what I wanted this one to be. So I kind of set everything up to where the bullet, bearing surface, and boat tail junction meets the next shoulder junction of the cartridge and was like, all right, this is kind of where I want it. I did it with everything from 95 SMKs to a 40mm or a 40 VMAX, which prior to the 22 arc, I'd never loaded for a 55 grain nothing or a 40 grain VMAX. As far as a 224 caliber, 6mm, yeah, like the arc, everybody's had 243s, yada, yada, yada. So I literally looked at the SAMI specs of a lot of those and said, all right, 243 has hammered light grain bullets for forever. What does that lead in and throat look like? 223, 55 grain. Some people get them shooting well, some people don't. All right, what are some nuances here? Kind of looked at a whole bunch of different cartridges. 224 Valkyrie, kind of looking through their iterations of free bores and games there, and hey, they made this change to 150. What did it do to the light grain bullets? Kind of games like that, and really just tried to figure out what I mystically thought would be the perfect case length to get it there. Did all this work, writing it up, like cool, drawing it out. This is where I think it is. And I got on Gordon's reloading tool. I was like, all right, what do I want to grab for like the first start just to see if this even has enough horsepower? So I started thumbing through all the cartridges that are kind of close and this, that, and the other. I was like, all right, 2224 Grendel, cool. That's, rip a grain off, shorten the case length, generally speaking, should be there. And I clicked on 22 PPC. And I was like, this is the exact same thing that I made minus 35 thou neck length. I didn't do anything different. I mean, I spent a lot of time trying to make sure everything went perfect. But at the end of the day, I didn't do anything different. I hadn't been out there winning Bintrest for 50 years. I was like, well, I'll just lie to myself and say, great minds think alike. Cool, sweet. So it's called a 22 arc. It ain't far from a 22 PPC. The accuracy of it is wicked. It's pretty cool. I'm really happy with it. Uh, I don't know why they didn't do 22 PPC in ARs like 30 years ago. But in my mind, when you're trying to minimize bolt thrust, because everybody that naysays a Grendel cartridge has either never shot one or they broke a bolt and they ran away from the cartridge.
Yeah, that
And
sounds
you know,
right.
the bolt is a crux. It sure is. Talked to a guy 2 days ago that actually had a new design set up. Pretty hopeful to get one of those in. Pretty excited about that. But long story short, most of, in my experience, watching guys on the range throw fits, you know, yeah, there's Facebook and all those threads and trying to help people, but like in person on the range, trying to walk through progressions, most of the problems that I have seen with 6.5 Grendel and 6 arc have been timing. I've not seen a bolt broke on legitimately a well-timed gun. You know, a lot of people say, no, it's timed, it runs good. I mean, just because it runs doesn't mean it's timed. I can take 5.56, a little 16-inch 5.56 with 77 grain that's tuned perfect, throw a suppressor on it, it will still run. It's going to eject everything super forward and it's going to rip apart the brass. But good luck making it not run if you have a decent can and a decent gas system. So there's a big difference in my mind between it runs and it runs correctly.
Yeah.
And,
Well, and
you
also
know,
in our sport, in the long range shooting sport, and a lot of the gas gun stuff or whatever, people are also trying to, you know, cut into the bleeding edge of function to reduce, you know, felt recoil and stuff like that. So, you know, they're cranking their gas system down to where it just, you know, farts out the brass and stuff like that. It's like, yeah, that's not how that was designed to be run, champ. And
you know,
unfortunately, that was a problem I saw a lot of people having with the 6.5 Grendel. 6.5 Grendel is still one of my favorite rifle cartridges, especially for killing deer. That cartridge is a deer killing machine. And
100 grain ballistic tip.
yeah, I like the SST. I run the 123 SSTs,
Okay.
and I've never shot a deer with a 6.5 Grendel that walked more than 25 yards. Um, Usually they drop right there because I like to shoot them in the head, but whatever. So the um, the people that were running 6.5 Grendel in competition and stuff like that, like they would run it for a while, and then they would slap a can on their gun, and then they would go, this thing's a piece of junk. I don't know why it's not working and all this stuff. And I was like, yeah, it's a completely different system whenever you throw a can on it and you're running a, you know, the short fat cartridge case with a, you don't have that tall powder column anymore. You've got this short powder column and stuff like that. So it's going to cause different initiation, which is going to cause different thrust. It's going to cause a different way that it feeds the gas, all of these things. And then whenever they go, well, this thing's a piece of junk, I'm like, is it, or do you just not really know what you're doing? So that
Yeah.
goes back to, you know, the tuning the gun thing, or a well tuned gun.
And you brought up a bunch of good points that all played into like my personal pretend you made something really cool um, kind of thing. Um, Recoil and operating system. So my big thing for basically as long as I've been shooting gas guns, getting face punched by a couple of really hard recoil ones, has been I need to be able to stay on target and see my entire trace and the impact, if at all possible. There's some
Mm-hmm.
scenarios where like match direct you put you in, you know, a Brokeback Mountain stance or whatever, you're not seeing trace there. Like the thing is just shooting and you happen to hit it, or you caught splash as quick as you could and moved it over. So I, you know, reducing that recoil and accuracy is what I kind of leaned on for this one. Like I knew I didn't want to go bigger than a 6.5 Grendel, necking it down because there's already a lot of bolt thrust in that initial peak start pressure of like a Grendel and anything like large and long. And it's not hard to control, it's just to control it in mass is very difficult. When you talk about manufacturing tolerances and people saying, "Oh man, I made a .088 gas port, and put it perfect on this gas block, and everything runs fine," and then like 2 or 3 guns later, that they built the house that are the same caliber and length, or whatever, they made one for their friend because they know how to do this one. Like the port for the gas block hole is different on that one than it is this one. And you just assembled parts. You didn't actually know what you were doing. You got good, but you assembled parts. And because these two aren't the same, it didn't work the same. So I kind of, tried to get something with a real minimal amount of bolt thrust. So that way, we were talking about our stupidity, trying to see what we could get away with a couple days ago. And, that was kind of my, like, I kind of want to see what, like, yeah, okay, for pressure, I measure, case webs, I measure ejector groove type things, and I have my own little way of doing it. And, software, I got 3 software programs, and they all kind of agree. But until you throw it on a pressure test, like, you don't actually know. So I kind of correlated stuff and played some games. And where was I going? Oh, that's what it was, the bolt thrust. I have broke a bolt on the 22 arc, but I took the fastest powder benchmark, threw it with an 88 ELDM, put it in a bad position, because the point was, I was like, people just reload stuff that they should not combine. You should not put a super fast powder with one of your heaviest grain weight projectile options and expect not to have an inertia movement backwards. It's just not a thing. And so I was like, all right, cool. So I set it up and I started shooting. I was like, man, this is actually really accurate. Like, I knew I liked benchmark, but okay, that's kind of cool. I was like, there's no way this is good for it. And I figured out a way to tune it, and I shoot basically everything suppressed. And it was running real well. And I was like, you know what? I wonder if I can do this. So I threw 3 mags down range, and the second round from the end of the 3rd mag, I had a stoppage. I was like, oh man, what happened here? And I pulled it out, and sure enough, there's a lug broke up in there. And I was like, okay, cool. So now the trend continues. Do not put super fast powder with super heavy bullet and expect everything to go great. It might do okay while you're slow aim firing and shooting, but you start burning it down on it, like, you're gonna tear some stuff up. But skip a beat to anything in the moderate burn rate category for the cartridge. Think, 8208 to
Varget.
Well, I would probably still go into that Reloader 15.5, N540, anything in that area. I've had no problems timing the gun, not messing up brass, getting great velocities, wicked accuracy. I have to say, though, I've only tried one non-temp stable powder in it. That mostly because of my aggravation with 6 arc only having one powder that gives it velocity and accuracy. And I get it,
Are you talking about Lev Revolution?
I am 100%. And, it's not that I dislike
Who
the
would have
powder.
guessed?
I don't dislike the powder. You can get the bore as dirty as you want to. It doesn't screw up accuracy. It's real easy to time everything on. It's not a bad powder. But in the summer, when I'm running 110s at 2605, and the winter I'm running those 110s at 2502, that's a discussion. Especially because, in the South, you wake up. Yeah, you wake up in the morning in the South and you're shooting in 28-degree weather hunting. Well, I'm not sticking myself anywhere where everybody's like, oh, I only hunt 100 yards. Man, I brought a rangefinder a whole lot of places, and I have yet to look through some pine thickets that I couldn't see 100 yards somewhere, aside from stupid heavy brush. You know, like
Yeah.
you get on the side of a mountain and you're wandering through foliage that is sitting here like this, you know, or a wonderful briar thicket or draw in the south.
That's where they like to run up to after you shoot them. They run straight into like the briars and stuff. That's the deer's way of being like, I'll show you.
Yeah, as close to the not in the water or clear brush as possible. Um, so yeah, no, but that's kind of where was I going with that? Trying to remember where I was going with that. So chalk that one
It's
up to
okay.
that.
You're still pretty. That's what's important. Just be pretty. So we were talking about maybe some differences between 22 Grendel and 22 Arc, and how I'm
yeah,
roughly. So for me, my grains of H2O is 35, like on the nose. I'm hitting between 34.9 and 35.1, and most of them are at 35 flat. So my average is 35. What are you getting
yeah.
out of your 22 Arc?
33.7 is like the smallest that I've
Okay.
found after fire forming. 33.9 to 34.1 happens to be where it is.
Is that with
Non-fired.
Starline Hornady? What? Mine is
So
Starline.
both of
I've only
them.
used Starline for mine.
So I kind of got lucky, probably like you, shooting Grendel, love Grendel, super accurate little cartridge.
Love it.
Brass leaves some discussion points to be desired, not the point.
Yeah.
But you know, the little cartridge is awesome. So I had some leftover 6.5 Grendel, and I knew people might want to go from Grendel to 22 Arc. So I was like, yeah, we'll just neck down 100 and see how it goes. And then 6 Arc, I took Starline and Hornady, neck down a couple hundred of each one, kind of played some games, learned. The Starline, the case capacity on the Starline, not fire formed, was like 33.3 to 33.4. Pretty consistent right there. But the Hornady 6 Arc neck down was 33.7. So it was already bigger. And so I was like, all right, cool. I'm going to see what these average out. I'm going to shoot 10 and see what the fire form resize is. And let's go with that. And they both ended up being, you know, basically 34, if you will. Like both of them measure the exact same. If you, I can pull up my notes on the 10 that I weighed and checked, and you know, minus the order of which you saw 33.9 or 34.1, the average was 34 on both. So I was like, all right, cool.
Well, so what really interests me about 22 Arc, you know, with the 22 Grendel, is, you know, whenever you're limited to your magazine length, which, you know, for 5.56 is usually 2.26. So like in my head, it stayed at 2.26. Like I've kept that number. But you can load to max mag with your cartridge, and I can load to max mag with mine. But like, you know, even if we stopped at the same number, we would still be stopping in the same place. But that would give you more usable internal case volume because of how far forward the projectile is of the main powder charge. So
Yeah,
we might be even closer by the time we actually throw the projectile. And if we're running at max mag, we might be even closer. We might be at, you know, a half grain distance from each other by the time it's all said and done.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I kind of throw some things in the we've learned this before category, like 260 versus 6.5. Yes, the 260 has a higher grain weight. They run the same speed. You can long load, short load, throw 48.31 shortcut in this one, 43.50 in this, like blah 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 blah. They really, as long as you're not only telling yourself you can only run 130s and a 260, which you can and you will reduce, you know, you throw some 147s in there, it's hanging out pretty far back, and you might You might not quite actually be on a bearing surface fully, but you know, it still runs the same velocity. So, you know, I kind of throw those in that discussion. Like, efficiency does provide some velocity in less charge weight.
Yeah. So if we're comparing apples and bananas to the people online, I don't know if you have your notes handy or whatever from your Varget test. So I've got mine right here. So we do not advise that you try this at home. We are stupid.
Any way.
We are dumb. Don't do what we do.
This is me and Cam going, okay, if someone just doesn't know to measure anything and has no other idea other than I'm going to load this thing until I see like a K-swipe or like a real flat primer, and I'm going to go, that is my hunting load. Or heaven forbid, that's my QP load.
I'm gonna run 200 rounds of this fast. Yeah, and you know what I was just thinking of when I was coming up with my loads for mine, I was using 34 as my number in quick load for pressure. When I do that because the velocity I'm getting doesn't even come close at 35 whenever I use 35 grains of H2O. So I was like, if I'm getting, you know, X amount of velocity, then I need to reduce my case capacity or play with the burn rate factor of the powder. And, you know, for me, I was running at 34 to try to figure out, you know, a safe area or whatever. And when I was plugging these numbers in last night at 34, it was like 65,000 PSI at my top charge or whatever. And I was like, that's rowdy. That's rough. And then, but then looking at the brass looks fine. So if somebody were to keep going with that, they would absolutely blow their face off.
Yeah,
all right,
for sure.
So did you have a 26.5 charge of Varget with your 80 grain ELDM?
I can pull up a 26.5. Give me just a minute.
Okay.
Only because
so basically,
I started at 27 on that stupidity idea.
We'll start at 27 then. Let's start at 27.
Okay.
So basically, just so that you guys know what's going on here, me and Jeff decided that we were going to conduct a little test betwixt our cartridges, mine being the 22 Grendel and his being the 22 Arc, and we kind of wanted to see what a charge of Varget with an 80 grain ELDM would do. I loaded mine at 2.26 because that's just always been what in my mind is max mag. I believe he loaded his to 2.275. Is that right?
My OG ladder with some common sense applied. The coal was 2.259. So so then you were right there where I was at 2.26. For the common sense approach, yes. But
okay. So at 27 grains of Varget, what was your velocity?
I had in my 16.5 inch barrels 2796, ES of 11, SD of 2.2. I set it shot 0.3 MOA. I think when I measured it, it was a little like 3 something MOA, or 0.3 something MOA. So that's where it was.
It was an okay group, is what you're telling us.
I was super happy.
Yeah. All right, at 27 grains with my 20 inch, I got 2941. So I've got 3.5 more inches a barrel. 3.5 inches is a lot. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise. I have 3.5 more inches of barrel than Jeff does, and that was a pretty substantial jump. I feel like usually for 22 caliber or 224 caliber bores, every inch of barrel to me usually equates to between 25 and 50 feet per second. Jeff, does that sound right, or did I misspeak somewhere?
So, ballparking answers, not a horrible like ballparking kind of discussion. This 22 arc, I have projections. I do not have real numbers because I've not shot anything more than a 16.5 inch. I just wanted a super small, light recoiling, high velocity, real good accurate thingy. And so 16.5 is what I did to max out the QP category because they
Yep.
want 16.5 for fun. So I was like, man, I might as well just do a half.
I don't know.
But
Did you see my post about I have a gun for every division next year? Because like open division this year would have been the division to shoot. Every single match you would have gotten a podium finish because there was only 5 shooters in open division at every match. So anytime somebody tells me they did good in open division, I'm like, you shut your mouth. So next season, I'm gonna do the dirty thing. I'm gonna do something a little bit shisty. I'm gonna wait a couple of matches in and see who's shooting what divisions, and whatever division you're shooting, whatever division Scott Peterson's shooting, whatever division Jordan Hammernick's shooting, whatever division y'all are shooting, I'm shooting the other one.
That's funny.
Anyway,
Lane. I keep trying to con him into GP. We'll all be kind of having a good time with that.
I want Lane to come back to the South. I want him to leave California so bad. Is he come? I wonder if he's coming to the finale. I would like to see him. I hope he's coming to the finale. He's coming to the finale?
Yeah, he said he was.
I haven't seen that dude in like 2 years. I haven't seen my leg in almost 2 years either, but that's another thing. Yeah, it is merely a flesh wound. All right, so at 27.1, did you get a substantial jump? Did you plateau? Were you roughly similar? Did you get a linear increase?
So I, just walked up in 0.1s.
Yeah, that's what I did too.
4 feet per second was the difference between 27 and 27.1. Then 27.2 went down to 27.85, so basically minus 15. And then 27.3 went up to 28.25. So like you can see it kind of wanting to peter out in that 27.1 kind of area is really like where I would say like that's probably a pretty predictable charge weight node. And then from 27.3 all the way to 28, you kind of ended up with 11 to 15 feet per second per tenth going up.
A linear increase.
Yeah. So that was the only weird one.
I stopped at 27.5 because I'm a coward. Not really. I stopped at 27.5 because I'm already missing fingers. I don't need to miss any more,
Fair.
So mine went at 27.1. My velocity increased 31 feet per second from 27. So at 27.1, I was already at 29.72. At 27.2, I dropped 2 feet per second. So this is, where that velocity node would probably be. At 27.2, I hit 29.70. At 27.3, it was 29.84. And then at 27.4, it was 29.86. So it only went up 2 feet per second. And then at 27.5, that's where I had my biggest jump. And it went up to 3,018 feet per second. Now, I measured the web of the case. I still was under 0.442. I was at 0.4415. And my primer wasn't completely flat. It wasn't blown out. I didn't have any crazy marks on the brass. But I know if I'm getting 3,000 feet per second out of this 20-inch barrel with an 80 grain ELDM, I've got to be in the 60,000 PSI range. Have to be.
Plus, yeah.
Yeah, like I got to be up there.
Yeah.
So that's why I stopped where I did, was because I was just like, man, grendel bolts are expensive.
Yeah, $180 per learning experience is a good time.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I mean, so I think projected, because I shot those, shooting a little guy. I think there's 125. All I'm doing is like changing the barrel length on quick load, Gordon's, and this other one that I have. And this is what it says. You know, it's I have not shot a 20-inch. 125 feet per second is what you would gain from the 16 and a half to 20-inch. The cool part is I gain, according to the software, about 75 to 80 feet per second, just going from 16 and a half to 18. Like, there's a big jump up there. I'm like, man, that's maybe I should have made a short one and run practical precision and kind of played that game. So yeah, but what does that pull me? That's still 30 feet per second or so. The 35 arc shy of the 22 Grendel. Yeah. Yeah. So from a
you mean I thought you were I was saying your increase was 35. Every inch was 35 feet per second, if that was the case. Yeah, so 125 divided by 3.5.
A version of that.
Yeah. So about 35. So let's see. What was your number at 27 again?
So 27 give me 2796. If you just kind of said 120 feet per second, that's 2901, a version of that.
Yeah, I got 2921 is what you have, and mine was at 2941. So we're right there, you know, like 20 feet per second different is what it's looking like. It's that's
yeah.
It depends how warm was it whenever you shot yours, and what density altitude were you at when you shot yours. It's like that 20 feet per second is within spec.
We could run that test 10 more times and we might flip flop. We might have the same. I mean, you can kind of bet that the 22 Grendel will have, on average, if you did 10 strings 10 times and averaged them, it'll probably be 20 to 30 feet per second faster in a general statement. So from a horsepower perspective, the 224 Grendel wins, just from a raw horsepower perspective.
Yep. Speed, bullet weight. Yep.
So, can you run 95 SMKs in yours? Have you tried, or do you know?
I can. I don't have any.
Okay. No, you know what? That's what Lane does. Yeah. So yes, you can.
So that Lane was actually the one who initially introduced me to the 22 Grendel as a concept, because it was around the same time that I was developing my rifle cartridge, the 6mm Hayes and stuff like that, and I was like talking to him about his what he was shooting, and that was also the same day that he had a bad day, because he was shooting, I believe, the 88 grain ELDMs, and he was using CFE 223 powder that he had done load development for in the wintertime. And then he was shooting it at the MAC in the summertime, and he had bullets like literally tearing themselves apart, because I think he had a 1 in 6 twist on his. So, based on rotation, his is 6.5. Yeah. That's what mine is. Based on rotational energy, the bullets were just shredding themselves. And I think his was a 24 or a 26-inch barrel too. Don't 26. Quote me on. Yeah, I remember his was longer than a 20, which was another thing I considered was for my 6mm Hayes that I could potentially run an open division next year. I've got a 24-inch barrel 6mm Hayes. And my projected, which there are certain bullets that I look for those 6mm cartridges that I just can't find. I'm sorry, the 95 grain SMK, I can't find those. And if you look at, from a BC perspective to weight, and you think about like the 20 inch or 18-inch 6 millimeter arc, people are running these 105s, 108s, 103s through their gun. They're running these, heavy 4 caliber projectiles out of their arcs and stuff like that. And that's why they're using Lever Evolution, because it's the only powder that'll get them even close to where they want to be with it. But then whenever they start running, stick powders and, some of the more stable powders and more temperature insensitive powders, they lose out on a whole lot of velocity. And then, your gain of BC is not equal to the gain of velocity to BC from the lighter projectiles. So that's why I really like the 95 grain class of bullet for those 6 millimeter guns in the like 20-inch barrel category. Now, because I have a 24-inch barrel on the 6 millimeter haze, I will likely be running 105s in it, but that's because I have the additional barrel to do so.
Yeah. And that was another thing getting on that is I have biasly only tested temp stable powders. So yep. I have 9 right now that shoot between 0.5 and 0.7, just kind of like, hey, if you walked out and you threw a ladder together and you said, that's what I'm going to do, with no real tweaking, you'll be 0.5, 0.7, pretty easy. And you might get lucky and have a couple of your, if you agged 5-shot groups, you might have some 0.3s, you might have some 0.2s, you might also have some 0.7s and 0.8s. That was pretty funny. So one of my first days going, I don't really know what to expect from this cartridge. So I loaded up like basically the max charge that I was getting off of these softwares, a half a grain lower and a half a grain lower than that. So kind of starting off in this, like, this is 1 grain lower than max, half of a grain away from max. Man, I really hope this is max and I didn't screw something up.
I hope this doesn't blow up in my face.
Yeah, I took 28 sets of that out in different bullets, different powders, kind of let's learn today. And the aggregate for those 28 3-shot groups, because they're 3 shots, they're just, they're a grain apart, was 0.512 across the 28. I had some that were like 0.2s, and I was like, oh, that's awesome. And then I had some that were like 0.8, 0.9, and, like you start shooting those groups and you start questioning everything about your gas gun shooting ability. Like, what is going on here? You get, it's kind of like taking 223 and you load it up with as much varget as you can possibly drop tube into it. And you go out and you act stupid with it and you try to see what you can get out of it for velocity. It's shotgun patterns. It goes crazy. And like you end up with, you might end up with 2 over here, 1 over here, 1 over here, 2 over there, and shenanigans going on, and nothing's predictable. That was my biggest fear with this, because at the end of the day, we all kind of want horsepower, but it was worrisome until I did that. I was like, yes, sweet. And but you don't know until you try it.
I will say, like, playing around in the reloading softwares and stuff like that, for both the 6 millimeter, for both the 6 millimeter haze whenever I first started messing with it, and for the 22 grendel, IMR 4895 sat pretty high on both lists. And I'd never used IMR 4895. It was always one of the powders that I just saw on the shelves and was like, nah.
Sorry.
and I bought a couple of pounds of it and used it in the 6 millimeter haze, a couple years ago, and I got really good numbers out of it. So then, plugging in the numbers for 22 Grendel, I've started playing with it a little bit, and I think that's my powder. That's the powder I've been running a little bit. Also, I did just tear apart one of my dies last night because I had told you that I was running into an issue where it looked like the brass was kind of getting crushed on one side because of the expanding mandrel decapper pin, whatever you want to call it, was too close on one side. So I took that apart last night and I looked at it and I was like, yep, that's what happened. So I've got, it's all going to be fire forming stuff, but I've got like 200 pieces of brass that have like a wonky neck now. And I was like, cool, glad it's all fire forming stuff.
You ain't wrong.
Yeah.
I'm trying to find a powder that everybody, I don't think is getting enough attention. Let's word it that way.
Yeah, I mean, I 48 definitely doesn't.
Yeah. Stable
How about
match.
Oh, okay, yeah, that's one I haven't played with. I haven't played with Stable Match. I've heard it's good from you.
So we all just load up stuff we have laying around for fun. And so for part of break-in, I was like, yep, totally gonna do this for 100 rounds. And 38 of them were across the chrono, like me just shooting groups at 100 and kind of learning and playing and yada, yada, yada. All the same charge weight. I just set up the Dillon, charged them off of that, powder drop off of that. And for 38 shots, the ES was 29, the muzzle velocity was 28.35, an SD of 7. Now it was 0.8 MOA. But just 38 shots, like off a Dillon powder measure, like come on, like that's crazy. That powder.
You made it sound like a 0.8 wasn't a good group. You're like, yeah, the group was a 0.8. Man, if my group is sub MOA, and I mean like 0.999 MOA, I'm like, yes, it's sub MOA. You're like, yeah, it only shot a 0.8.
Yeah, some of this conversation may turn me into a rifle snob kind of sounding person. But like the problem, the crux of the entire problem is T-Box has spoiled me. Like if it shoots 0.5 or 0.6, if I shot five shot groups, okay, that's an average barrel. I might get some that are be 0.489 is kind of the best that I've gotten out of a new barrel for a 5 shot group ag. But as soon as it touches 0.6, where it does a version of like a shotgun pattern looking thing where, one over here, 2 there, 1 there, yada, yada. Yeah, it measures 0.6, but that jazz is not repeatable. As soon as it gets there, I'm like, nope, switching out a barrel. Like this thing's gone.
Done.
Yeah. That's what it was. So part of the, when I was super scared about this cartridge, like the second time I went out and I think I was loading 4350, really, really low, just kind of, let's fire form some stuff. Let's kind of see what we're gonna see. Let's play iffy. My velocities were like 2400, like they were wicked low. But I was, gaining some confidence, kind of learning, getting. Because I'm the only one that shot this, and I don't know until I try it. It took me a while to get up, to where I am trusting software and running in this 52 to 55,000 psi area. I've had no hiccups. I've been super happy. I just kind of think that's where it wants to live. I assume the 22 Grendel is the same spot.
Yeah, I like 55K is the high end of what I'm feel comfortable loading for. and I typically, oh, Charlie wants to be part of the video. Hello.
What's up?
I will typically load it below the 55, or at least what it projects a 55 is, 55,000, and that's just like a safety thing. It's like I want my brass to last. I don't want to have to replace my brass after 2 firings and stuff like that. So it has to do with a lot of that, because like there is no. It's not commercially available, like 6.5 Grendel, where you can just go, buy some off a shelf, or you can order some online, and then you shoot it, and then whenever you run it through a die, it's no big deal. There is no 20 Grendel or 22 arc brass available as is. You can't just buy it as is and throw primer powder projectile on it and go shoot it. You have to invest time, energy, and effort into making every single round that goes through your gun. So
that brings us to another point. We cannot forget, sorry to interrupt, we cannot forget to go through how to make 224 Grendel brass.
So I did a
22
video.
arc, sorry.
I did a video on my Patreon about how I do it. And that's, I think I have a link for my Patreon in my, in the comment section or in the description of this video or whatever. I have a video on that, but generally, like, I'm not actually going to show you because that would take another, hour. Is I take 6.5 Grendel factory brass, and then I take, which, brass from the factory is generally pretty soft already. So I'll take 6.5 Grendel brass factory, and I will run it through a 6.5 Grendel neck bushing only die. So it's not touching the body, not touching the shoulder. And I'll run it through that die at 271. Just a moment. Nope. At 271, 263, and then I'll run it through the 224 Predator die. What I did on some of it last night was, instead of running it through the 224 Predator die, because it has that imperfection inside of it, I ran it through a 249 as my last one, because what I found with that Starline brass is 249 outside diameter will give me 3/1000ths of neck tension. So that was what I ran. 3/1000ths of neck tension is kind of my standard for most gas gun cartridges. I forgot to mention that I anneal it too. I anneal it after the first 2 neck sizings. I do the first 2 neck sizings just from factory brass, because, like I said, factory brass is generally pretty soft. And then I anneal it after that, and then I run it through its final process on the press, and then I seat the bullet. I tried doing it where I annealed after the first 2 sequences, did the last one, then annealed it again before seating the bullet, and that just made it too soft. Yep.
Yeah. So it needs to be noted that he's going from 6.5 to 22. I'm just going from 6 to 22. So when it sounds like mine is somehow wickedly easier, he's coming down twice. Like it's not that it's easier, it's just missing a step. So don't hold it against the 224 Predator for that. Like, it's 6.5 Grendel, that is the parent, and it's a good little cartridge. But yeah, mine's just kind of take your 6 arc brass. You should be able to just leave your shoulder in the same spot if the same gunsmith got them both. I just changed the bushing out, and I literally just, that's it. So I didn't have to change my die or anything. There was a thou difference between what it would have been bumped back 3 to 5 thou. That 4 thou average was a thou short is kind of where it was. And I was like, easy days. Mm-hmm. I will say there are a couple cartridge offerings in this area. 22 Grendel, 22 PPC, 22 DPC, 22, is it 22 LBC?
224 LBC.
224 LBC. Different case lengths. So when you neck down 6 arc, necking down 6 arc isn't like necking down 6.5 grendel. When you neck down 6.5 grendel to 22, you have this like wicked long neck, and you just trim it off and you're good to go. Some of the guys that are doing the 22 arc setups aren't thinking about case length growth when they neck it down, and their necks are 25 thou long in their chambering for what the brass will be when you neck it down. And that's horrible. That's just asking for a carving arc. The brass is not going to grow 24,000 silver firings. Most of this is Hornady and Starline brass. You'll be throwing it away after, at best, the 6th, 8th firing, and 1 to 2 thou per firing for that. Pretending when you inside chamfer or outside chamfer, you don't take any length off. At absolute most, 14 to 16 thou is what that'll grow, and that's no bueno for just letting it bounce around in there before it obturates and has a good day. So the 6 arc is set up 10 thou from just a normal factory round. So no issues there. I'm pretty sure the 224 AR is also. I don't think there's a crazy long neck in that one versus what you can trim to. So that's a good thing.
The trim length on 22 Grendel or 224 AR or 220 Russian, whatever you want to call it, is it's the same as Grendel, so it's 1.510 is the trim 2 length, and the max is 10 thou over.
Okay, so 5.2. Yeah.
All right, so we have come up on the hour and 15-minute mark, which is kind of where I like to chop these videos off at. I'm going to go through the comments with you and together. So Shooting the Shit podcast, that's a podcast I was on kind of recently. Good buddy of mine on there. He brought me on just to, kind of talk about my accident and stuff like that. He said, "What's up?" I didn't comment because I was, doing this. He said that 223 Wild is his favorite chambering. Oh, I've got a alert. For the dial and hold, he said hold. Steven Sutton, which is he was one of my soldiers in the Army years ago. He said the silent majority demand the Spankin' the Breeze podcast. Me and him have talked about jokingly doing a what's it called? A parody of this podcast called Spankin' the Breeze. 4570, and then 3.5 inches is all I got. Somebody named Isaiah Spurgeon said, "Jeff let me shoot a couple rounds of 22 arc up at Coleman's Creek, super smooth," and then he did the Italian hands. I can't hear you. I cannot hear you. He's a mute. Oh no. OnlyFans handle. Lol. Jeff, are you having technical difficulties? Can you hear me? Give me a nod or a shake. No? Lame. Well, it happened right here at the end of the show anyway. So you want to wave bye, Jeff? We're doing Navy SEAL hand signals, in case you guys were curious. My OnlyFans handle, or Jeff's OnlyFans handle, mine is the Camputee, and all there is on there is videos of me spitting pickle juice at people in a Walmart parking lot. So don't expect to see my chili ring or anything like that. I'm literally bringing Jeff back on to say bye if he comes back quickly enough. Do you guys have any questions? The 3 viewers that I have right now, you guys want to jump in the comments and say that you hated the podcast or that you're glad it's back? All right, let's bring Jeff back in, add to stage. There he is. So what I was saying was, I'm literally bringing you back in for us to say bye because it's the end of the podcast. But
Sorry, I missed all the questions.
yeah, no, it was basically the only one was somebody named Isaiah Spurgeon said that Jeff let me shoot a couple of rounds through his 22 arc up at Coleman Creek, super smooth, and they did the Italian hands.
Yeah, I kind of handed it off to a couple people. Kind of, how do they shoot? Is it just me, or I get lucky? Like what, But I think he did really, really well. Him and his shooting partner both shot it, and they grouped really, really well. I was like, all right, cool. So
whenever I hand somebody one of my guns and they shoot it really well, I'm like, give me my damn gun back.
There's Eric Lee has a couple discussions about that. And most of them being me as the victim. So, yeah, there's
Imperial Concepts asked what your OnlyFans handle is.
I don't have one.
No handle. He posts his butthole pictures for free. And those are the only questions we got right now. This is going to be posted on my YouTube channel, so we'll check it periodically and look to see if anybody had anything to say. And I'd like to have you back on the show another time. We could do maybe a part 2 once we get some more information, like after we get further into these cartridges, because we do technically both have 2 different cartridges.
Mm-hmm.
We could get more. We'll have more information to give people about them and stuff like that. Maybe we can talk about some of our experiences, because you're shooting the finale, right?
I'm going to shoot the PRS finale, not the QP one. So,
that's bad.
There's only so much money in the piggy bank.
I get it.
So, yeah.
All right. And Imperial Concepts, do you know who that is?
Mm-mm.
Said, I'm only here on the hopes of seeing a chocolate starfish. Thoughts on 6-arc versus 6.5 Grendel? Ooh. All right. What are your thoughts on 6.5 versus 6-arc? 6.5 Grendel versus 6-arc.
I mean, I've shot them both, thousands of rounds in both, couple barrels. I have to lean on the masses, if I will, because my experience with both have been excellent. You can put a 130 AR hybrid in a 6.5 Grendel, load it with CFE 223, 8208, H335, and you're going to have the same wind drift as you will in your best 6-arc bullet, probably. But that said, you've probably been shooting Grendel longer than I have, or just as long, whatever. There's significantly less bolt breakages with the 6-arc than the 6.5 Grendel, and I attribute that to that initial start pressure of powders. And for something to start after a bullet has obturated and gain that potential energy to win, size matters. And when you don't push a third more of the weight down the bore, yes, it is in a smaller bore, but if you looked at a bore and you said, hey, what is that? 7% difference between a 6 mil and a 6.5, but there's a 30% grain weight difference. Well, that means there's a lot less peak start pressure to start. And the same is true with 22 arc or 22 Grendel. There's a lot less peak start pressure. So brass life is way better on the smaller diameter, less weight cartridges, barring you being retarded with how you feel like loading this week. But the 6-arc kind of beats it hands down for reliability and just a selection of bullets. But powders, the Grendel's way more versatile.
So, and for me, I don't own a 6mm arc. I've shot other people's arcs. I had a T&E gun at one time that was a 6 arc. that I got to play with. And what I found with the Arc versus Grendel is I think that whenever they put that initial, which this goes back to what you were just talking about, Jeff, the 52,000 psi as the chamber pressure for it, I think that it was because of the weight class of projectile that you're shooting out of the 6.5 Grendel versus, the 6 Arc versus the 22 Grendel. And that's why I don't feel any, excuse me, that's why I don't feel any kind of heartburn towards, running the numbers at 55,000 psi for a 22 Grendel and stuff like that, because your bolt thrust is completely different. You're shooting a much lighter projectile with a powder that's not only a different burn rate, probably, because you can run the same powders or whatever, but you're also running a different charge weight. So, you've got these different, it completely changes, like they're not even close to the same, but applications for use and things like that. Like I said, I love killing deer with 6.5 Grendel. Love killing deer with 6.5 Grendel. I think that if you wanted to shoot deer with 6mm arc, you'd be fine, because people have been killing deer with 243 Winchester forever.
I've had great luck with it.
So perfect little deer cartridges, both of them are. I wouldn't say go bear hunting with either of them. Unless you're very brave. And as far as, long range performance, Arc beats out Grendel because you are matching velocity increase. You're matching BC increasing velocity. So it is going to beat out the Grendel in long range performance. It's just the way it is. But also, throwing our fun little cartridges in there, we're matching BC, or maybe just barely below BC, and increasing velocity. So we beat out 6 Arc. It's just
100%.
Just the way it works.
Yeah.
And also, Imperial Concepts is a guy named Ryan Lee. I believe he is a sponsored shooter for, I think he shoots for Amic Guns and maybe a couple others. I think Imperial Concepts is his company. He's a dude that I served with.
Okay.
Yeah, I think he was a 13 something. I think he was like a 13 Fox or something.
Okay. A little fister.
Yep.
Good deal.
Anyway, all right. Closing thoughts. Do you have anything that you would like to say? Anybody you want to shout out? Any companies, or do you just want to say bye? And then I'll say bye, and then we'll end the podcast.
I guess I should throw in a blurb for Sergeant of Arms, because they do, that's who I shoot PRS for. Phenomenally accurate guns. Retardedly accurate. Everybody, you can throw all your expectations out the window and expect a bolt gun type accuracy. Don't load for it like you do a bolt gun. That's crazy. But you won't be far off. You may even be better in some instances. Vortex has always done real well for me. And Extreme Adventure Outdoors is a new one that came up. They're a vet-owned 501 organization that kind of helps guys with hunts and getting out and doing stuff, and that rehab through activity type thing. So Those would be my big 3 shout outs.
Awesome. I would definitely shout out Resurgence PPG. It is a veteran-owned 501. What he was talking about is a nonprofit organization where he takes disabled vets and takes them on paramotor rides. Sawtooth Oak Farms, which is a hunting club in Gold Hill, North Carolina, for disabled people, not necessarily just veterans, but I and my wife have gotten to go on multiple hunts with them already, and we've been drawn to hunt with them again this year. And Quantified Performance. I feel like I need to throw a shout out to QP, because they, I really enjoy the matches. I'm actually going to be the match director for 6 of their matches next shooting season, 3 at Sawmill and 3 at Clinton House. So, and you know, I appreciate that they think that I can handle the responsibility of being a match director and, you know, stuff like that. But anyway, guys, I appreciate you guys watching. Jeff, I appreciate you being on here. And y'all get out there and suck today's dick.